My mother looked radiant in her burgundy dress, the candlelight catching the silver in her hair as she laughed at something my sister said. Victoria had chosen this restaurant, of course. She always did. It was the kind of place where the menu didn't list prices and the waiters spoke in hushed, reverent tones about the provenance of every ingredient. The kind of place that screamed success. I smoothed down my thrift store blouse and tried not to think about how much this dinner was going to cost. Not that I couldn't afford it. I could. I just didn't spend money this way. Emma. Victoria's voice cut through the ambient murmur of expensive conversation. Stop slouching. You're 30, not 13. I straightened automatically, that old muscle memory from childhood kicking in. Sit up straight. Smile. Don't embarrass the family. Victoria looked perfect, as always. Her blonde hair fell in salon fresh waves over her shoulders, her navy sheath dress probably cost more than my monthly rent, and the diamond on her left hand caught the light every time she moved. Which was often. She wanted everyone to see it. So, Victoria's fiancé, Marcus, leaned forward with that particular smile wealthy men use when they're about to say something they think is helpful. Emma, right? Victoria tells me you're still doing the freelance thing? The freelance thing. As if my career were a phase, like my brief obsession with pottery in college or that time I thought I could learn Italian. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of water. Keeping busy with projects. That's great. Marcus enthused with the kind of forced positivity people use when they don't know what else to say. Good for you, staying flexible in this economy. Victoria was just telling me how tough it must be, you know, without the stability of a real position. I saw my father's eyes flick to me, that familiar concern creasing his forehead. My mother set down her wine glass a little too carefully. Emma works very hard, Mom said, but her voice had that edge to it. The one that meant she was defending me while secretly agreeing with the criticism. Of course she does. Victoria jumped in, reaching over to pat my hand. The diamond flashed again. I just worry, you know? No benefits, no 401k, no clear career trajectory. Emma. You're so talented. You could be doing so much more with your life. I smiled. I'd gotten very good at smiling through these conversations. I'm happy where I am, I said. Victoria exchanged a look with Marcus. That look. The one that said, see what I mean? She's in denial. Well, Victoria continued, turning to address the whole table. Her voice had that particular quality it took on when she was about to share good news about herself. Speaking of careers, I have some exciting news. I got the promotion. The table erupted in congratulations. Dad stood up to hug her. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Marcus beamed like he'd personally orchestrated the whole thing. Senior Director of Marketing Strategy, Victoria announced, letting the title roll off her tongue like fine wine. 180,000 base, plus bonuses. And I'll be overseeing the entire North American marketing division for Patterson Pharmaceuticals. 40 people reporting directly to me. That's wonderful, sweetie, Mom said, dabbing at her eyes. All that hard work paying off. It really is, Victoria agreed. She turned to me. You see, Emma, this is what I mean. Building something sustainable. I started at Patterson right out of business school, worked my way up systematically. 10 years of dedication. That's what creates real security. I nodded, taking another sip of water. My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. And that's not even the biggest news, Victoria continued, squeezing Marcus's hand. We're buying a condo. Downtown, full-service building, 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. 1.2 million. More congratulations. More tears from Mom. Dad asking about the mortgage rate, neighborhood, whether they'd considered property taxes. We're putting down 30%, Marcus said. Victoria's been very disciplined with her savings. Emma, Dad said, and I could hear the comparison coming before he even finished the sentence. Have you thought about buying? Building equity? You can't rent forever. I like my place, I said. Which was true. My studio apartment in a converted warehouse had good light and cost less than a third of what Victoria probably paid for her place. I'd been able to save almost everything I made because my overhead was so low. Not that anyone at this table knew how much I made. You're almost 30, though, Victoria said. Don't you want to start putting down roots? Build towards something? My phone buzzed again. I shifted in my seat. I am building towards something, I said quietly. Freelance projects aren't building, honey, Mom said gently. They're just getting by. Your father and I worry. What happens when you get sick? What about retirement? What if the work dries up? The waiter appeared with appetizers I hadn't ordered. Probably Victoria's doing. Oysters, something with truffle oil, a tiny salad that cost more than most people's full meals. These are on me, of course, Victoria said. Consider it an early birthday present, Em. I know money's probably tight. I smiled again. That's generous. Thank you. Victoria turned back to Marcus, launching into a story about her promotion, about how she pitched a complete restructuring of their Q4 campaign strategy and the CEO had personally called to congratulate her. The table listened, enraptured. My sister had always been good at commanding a room. I picked at the salad, watching my family watch Victoria. This was how it had always been. Victoria, 4 years older, blonde and beautiful and successful. Following the script perfectly. Good grades, good school, good job, good marriage. And me, the unexpected second daughter, the one who colored outside the lines, who chose art school over business school, who worked from coffee shops instead of corner offices. The thing is, Victoria was saying, in corporate America, you have to be strategic. You can't just drift around hoping things work out. You need a plan, a trajectory, markers of success that others can recognize. She gestured with her wine glass, and I noticed her nails were freshly manicured. Probably had them done this afternoon. That's why I worry about Emma, she continued, and suddenly everyone was looking at me again. She's so talented, but she doesn't have any of those markers. No title, no company name to put on her LinkedIn, no clear upward mobility. Just projects. It's hard to take seriously, you know. My phone buzzed a third time. I pulled it out, glanced at the screen. Sarah, my COO. It could wait. Expecting an important call? Victoria asked, her tone making it clear she thought that was unlikely. Just work stuff, I said, putting the phone face down on the table. See, that's what I mean, Victoria said, turning to Marcus. Work stuff. Not a client, not a project, just stuff. Emma, you need to start thinking bigger. Take yourself more seriously. I take myself seriously, I said. Do you, though? Victoria leaned forward. Because from the outside, it looks like you're just treading water. Working from home in your pajamas, taking whatever small jobs come your way. That's not a career, that's a hobby that pays. I felt my mother's hand on my arm. Victoria, that's a bit harsh. I'm being honest, Mom. Someone has to be. Emma's almost 30 and she's not building toward anything concrete. No savings, no property, no career advancement. What happens in 10 years? 20? My phone started buzzing continuously. I looked down. Sarah calling. I should take this, I said, starting to stand. Really? Victoria laughed. Right now? In the middle of Mom's birthday dinner? It might be important, I said. Everything's important when you're freelance, Victoria said. One of your clients probably wants to change a font or something. Can't it wait 30 minutes? I sat back down. The phone stopped buzzing. Marcus cleared his throat. So, Emma, what kind of projects are you working on these days? Logos, business cards? Various things, I said vaguely. Branding projects, mostly. She's being modest, Dad said. Show them that website you did for that local restaurant, Emma. That was nice. That was 3 years ago. And it hadn't been just a website, but I'd stopped trying to explain the difference between a full brand identity system and making a website to my family. You know, Victoria said, if you want, I could put in a word for you at Patterson. We're always looking for in-house designers. Entry level, obviously, but it would give you stability, benefits. A chance to learn how real businesses operate. Entry level. I was trying to decide whether to feel insulted or amused when my phone started buzzing again. For God's sake, Emma, just answer it, Victoria said. Before it ruins the whole dinner. I picked up the phone. Hi, Sarah. Emma, I'm so sorry to interrupt. Sarah's voice was bright with barely contained excitement. I know you're with family, but this couldn't wait. What's up? I asked, aware that everyone at the table had gone quiet, listening. Adobe signed. The contract came through an hour ago. I felt my heart rate pick up. The full package? Full package. 2.3 million for phase 1, with options for phase 2 and 3. Emma, they want us to do their complete enterprise rebrand. Global implementation. This is huge. I was quiet for a moment, processing. The table was still watching me. Victoria had raised an eyebrow. That's. I started. And Fast Company called, Sarah continued. They want to move up the interview. Something about their 30 under 30 entrepreneurs issue coming out earlier than expected. They want to shoot tomorrow if possible. Tomorrow? I glanced at my family. Can we push it? I tried. They said tomorrow or we miss the issue entirely. It's your call, boss. Boss. Sarah had never called me that before. Okay, I said. Tomorrow morning. Schedule it. You got it. Sorry again for the interruption. Tell your family happy birthday from all of us. Will do. Thanks, Sarah. I hung up. The table was silent. My mother was looking at me with a confused expression. Dad had set down his fork. Victoria's smile had frozen on her face. What, Victoria said slowly, was that about? I set my phone down carefully. Work. Emma, Dad said. Did she say 2.3 million? I nodded. Adobe just signed on as a client. Full rebrand package. Adobe, Marcus repeated. The Adobe? Yeah. For $2.3 million? Victoria's voice had gone up half an octave. That's just phase 1, I said. The full project is larger if they exercise their options. Mom was staring at me like I'd suddenly started speaking Mandarin. Emma, I don't understand. You're a freelancer. You do logos and websites for small businesses. Not exactly, I said. Then what exactly? Victoria's tone had shifted. The condescension was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Confusion. Maybe a hint of panic. I took a breath. This wasn't how I'd wanted to do this. I'd been planning to tell them eventually, when the timing felt right, when I had the words prepared. But Sarah's call had forced my hand. I run a design agency, I said. Reyes Creative. We specialize in brand strategy and identity for large companies going through transitions. Mergers, acquisitions, pivots, that kind of thing. An agency, Dad repeated slowly. How large an agency? Victoria asked. 45 people. 47 once we finish this round of hiring. The silence that followed was profound. Even the ambient restaurant noise seemed to fade. 45 people, Mom said faintly. Emma, are you saying you have 45 employees? Well, a mix. Some are full-time, some are contractors. But yeah. Around that number. Victoria was staring at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Since when? I started the company about 4 years ago. It was just me and 2 contractors at first, working with smaller clients. But it grew faster than I expected. We hired our first full-time employee 3 years ago, moved into a real office space 2 years ago, and now we have clients across North America and Europe. Europe? Dad's voice cracked slightly. Mostly UK and Germany. We did a rebrand for a Frankfurt-based fintech last year. That was actually our first 8-figure contract. 8 figures, Victoria said. She seemed to be having trouble processing this. As in, more than 10 million? The fintech project was 12 million spread over 18 months, I said. Adobe is our biggest contract to date, though. Marcus had been quiet, but now he leaned forward. You're telling me that while you've been showing up to family dinners in thrift store clothes, driving that beat-up Honda, living in a studio apartment, you've been running a multi-million-dollar company? Yeah, I said simply. Why? Mom asked, and her voice was so small, so confused. Why didn't you tell us? I looked around the table. At my mother's hurt expression, my father's bewilderment, Victoria's shock, Marcus's calculating reassessment. Because every time I tried, I said quietly, you cut me off to tell me how I needed a real job, how I needed stability, how I was wasting my potential. It became easier to just let you think what you wanted to think. But Emma, Dad said, we thought you were struggling. We thought you could barely make rent. I know, I said. But I tried to tell you, remember? 2 years ago at Thanksgiving, I mentioned that my business was growing and I'd hired some people. You told me I needed to stop calling it a business and start looking for real employment with benefits. Dad's face flushed. I don't remember that. I do, I said. And last Christmas, when I said I'd been working with some bigger clients, Victoria told me I was delusional about my prospects and I needed to be more realistic about my limitations. Victoria opened her mouth, then closed it again. So I stopped trying, I continued. I kept living small, dressing normal, driving my old car. Not because I had to, but because it was easier than fighting you every time we met. And honestly, I like my life. I like my little apartment with the good light. I like biking to my office. I don't need the big condo or the designer clothes or the BMW to feel successful. Your office, Mom said. You have an office? A 12,000 square foot loft in the Pearl District, I said. We moved in last year when we outgrew the previous space. Open floor plan, standing desks, a full kitchen, a quiet room for when people need to focus. It's nice. Victoria had gone very pale. The Pearl District. That's expensive, yeah. But we needed the space. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. A text from Sarah. Should I send you the Adobe contract PDF or wait until tomorrow? I texted back, tomorrow is fine. Who's Sarah? Mom asked. My chief operating officer. She handles the business side while I focus on creative strategy. We also have a CFO, a creative director, a VP of client services. It's a real company, Mom. With an org chart and everything. Dad was shaking his head slowly. 4 years. You've been running this company for 4 years and we had no idea. I dropped hints, I said. You didn't hear them. Or you didn't want to hear them. Victoria finally found her voice. The Fast Company interview. They said 30 under 30 entrepreneurs? Yeah. Apparently someone on their editorial team heard about the Adobe deal and wanted to profile the company. It's good PR. PR, Victoria repeated. She looked down at her hands, at the engagement ring that had seemed so impressive 15 minutes ago. You have PR. We hired a firm last year, I said. Client referrals are great, but at a certain scale, you need professional visibility. We're pitching for 3 more Fortune 500 contracts right now. The PR helps with credibility. Marcus cleared his throat. What's your? I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what's the company's annual revenue? He hesitated. Numbers made it real in a way that words didn't. Last year we did about 19 million, I said. This year we're on track for 28, assuming the Adobe deal goes through all phases. Victoria made a small sound. It might have been a laugh or a gasp or something in between. 28 million, Dad said. Revenue, not profit, I clarified. Profit margins in creative services are tighter. But yeah, we're doing well. The waiter appeared to clear our appetizer plates. The table remained silent as he worked, all of us trapped in this new reality where everything we thought we knew had suddenly inverted. When the waiter left, Mom reached across the table and took my hand. Her eyes were wet. Baby, she said. I'm so sorry. It's okay, Mom. It's not okay, she said. We should have listened. We should have seen. You saw what you expected to see, I said. Immigrant parents who worked their whole lives for stability. You wanted that for me too. I get it. But we made you feel like you had to hide, Dad said. Like your success was something to be ashamed of. Not ashamed, I said. Just private. Maybe I liked having this part of my life that was just mine. Where I didn't have to be the disappointing daughter. You were never disappointing, Mom insisted. Victoria laughed, a short, bitter sound. She wasn't disappointing. I was the one disappointing. We all turned to look at her. What are you talking about? Mom asked. Victoria, you've done so well. Your promotion, your career. I make $180,000 a year, Victoria cut her off. That felt huge. That felt like I'd made it. And my baby sister, who I've been patronizing for years, who I thought was barely scraping by, is running a company that makes more in a month than I make in a year. Victoria, I started, but she held up her hand. No, let me finish. Do you know what I said to you last year? I told you that you needed to be more realistic about your limitations. Your limitations. As if I had any idea what you were capable of. As if I had any right to judge. Her voice had gone thick. Marcus put his hand on her shoulder, but she shook him off. I was so smug, she continued. So sure that my path was the right path, the only path. Corporate ladder, titles, salary benchmarks. I measured success in the most conventional way possible and assumed anyone who didn't follow that formula was failing. But you weren't failing. You were building something I couldn't even imagine. Your career is impressive too, I said, and I meant it. Senior director at 32? That's real success, Victoria. Is it, though? She gestured around the expensive restaurant. I chose this place to show off. I made sure to mention my salary, my promotion, my condo. Everything I've said tonight has been designed to make sure everyone knows how well I'm doing. How successful I am. And you've been sitting there, quietly running circles around me, and you didn't say a word. Because it's not a competition, I said. Maybe it should be, Victoria said. Maybe if I'd been competing, I would have pushed myself harder. Built something instead of climbing someone else's ladder. You are building something, I said. You're building a career, expertise, a reputation in your field. There's nothing wrong with that path. But there's nothing particularly right about it either, Victoria said. I did what I was supposed to do. What Mom and Dad expected. What business school prepared me for. I never asked myself what I actually wanted. The entrees arrived. Nobody moved to eat. I wanted to ask you something, Victoria said quietly. Back when you first started, when it was just you freelancing, were you scared? Terrified, I admitted. I had about $20,000 saved from my corporate job before I quit. That was supposed to last 6 months. I thought I'd have to go back to a regular job when it ran out. What happened? I got lucky. I did a logo for a startup, and they loved it. They referred me to their investors. Those investors had other portfolio companies. Suddenly, I had more work than I could handle alone. I brought on contractors, then hired my first employee. Each step felt like jumping off a cliff, but somehow it worked out. $20,000, Dad said. That's what you started with? Yeah. I lived on ramen and slept on an air mattress for the first year. It wasn't glamorous. But you didn't tell us, Mom said. Why didn't you ask for help? Because you would have talked me out of it, I said simply. You would have said it was too risky, too unstable, too uncertain. And maybe you would have been right. Most startups fail. I could have lost everything. But you didn't fail, Dad said. No, I agreed. I didn't fail. Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, can I see it? See what? Your office. Your company. I want to see what you built. I looked at her carefully, trying to gauge whether this was genuine curiosity or some new form of competition. But her face was open, vulnerable, in a way I'd never seen before. Sure, I said. You can visit any time. Tomorrow? She asked. After your Fast Company interview? Tomorrow works. She nodded, then picked up her fork with a shaky laugh. I can't believe I offered to get you an entry-level design job. Jesus. You probably would have had to take a pay cut of about $2 million. Despite everything, I laughed. It was a generous offer. It was insulting, she said. I'm sorry, Em. Really sorry. I know, I said. We ate in silence for a few minutes. The food was probably excellent, but I barely tasted it. I was too busy processing the fact that my family's entire understanding of who I was had shifted in the space of a 15-minute phone call. What made you choose that path? Mom asked eventually. Creative work, starting a business. Where did that come from? I thought about it. Remember when I was in high school and I redesigned the logo for Dad's restaurant? Dad's face brightened. I still have that logo. We used it for years. That was the first time I realized design wasn't just about making things pretty. It was about communication, strategy, psychology. About understanding what a company needed to say and finding the visual language to say it. That felt important. Meaningful. And you've been doing that ever since, Mom said softly. On a larger scale, yeah. Our clients come to us when they're at inflection points. When they're merging with a competitor, or pivoting to a new market, or trying to attract a different demographic. They need to communicate change, and we help them do that through design. That sounds fascinating, Marcus said. He'd been quiet for most of the conversation, but now he leaned forward with genuine interest. What was the Adobe project about? They're consolidating several acquired companies under a unified brand architecture. It's complex because each acquisition has its own customer base, its own brand equity. We need to honor that history while creating cohesion. It's a 3-year project if we do it right. 3 years, Victoria said. So this isn't just one big paycheck. It's ongoing work. All our major clients are ongoing relationships, I said. The initial contract is usually just the first phase. If we do good work, we become their long-term strategic partner. Dad was shaking his head with a small smile. My daughter, the entrepreneur. I got it from you, I said. You took a risk when you opened your restaurant. That first location, remember? You mortgaged everything. Mom was terrified. I was, Mom admitted. But your father had a vision. He knew the community needed what he was offering. Same thing, I said. I saw that mid-size companies were being underserved by the big brand agencies. Too small for Pentagram or Lander, too sophisticated for local shops. There was a gap, and I filled it. And now you have 45 employees, Victoria said. There was awe in her voice now instead of disbelief. 47 soon, I reminded her. We're hiring a UX researcher and a junior account manager. The waiter came by to check on us. Victoria waved him away. The woman who called you, Mom said. Sarah. She said all of us. All of who? The team, I said. They know I'm out for Mom's birthday. Sarah probably has them celebrating in the office right now. Landing Adobe is huge for us. It validates everything we've been building. They're at the office celebrating without you? Dad asked. Yeah. I told them to order pizza on the company card, maybe open some champagne. They deserve it. They've all been working insane hours to put that pitch together. You celebrate with your team, Victoria observed. They're not just my team, I said. They're what makes the company work. I have the vision, but they execute it. Every single person matters. That's good leadership, Marcus said. A lot of founders struggle with that transition from solopreneur to actual manager. I struggled too, I admitted. The first year after we hired employees was brutal. I wanted to do everything myself, control every detail. Sarah basically staged an intervention and made me hire a management coach. Best money I ever spent. You have a management coach? Victoria asked. Had. For about 18 months. He helped me learn to delegate, to trust my team, to build systems instead of being the system. I could probably use that, Victoria muttered. We finished our entrees. The waiter appeared again, this time with a birthday cake for Mom. 60 candles, somehow lit without setting off the fire alarm. The restaurant sang. Mom cried happy tears. Victoria squeezed my hand under the table. When the cake was distributed and eaten, when the coffee was poured and declined, Victoria pulled out her wallet to pay the bill. Let me get this one, I said. Victoria paused. Emma. It's fine. I invited everyone. I can. I know you can, I said. But it's Mom's birthday, and I'd like to treat. Please. She hesitated, then nodded and put her wallet away. I pulled out my wallet and extracted a black card. Amex Centurion. The waiter's eyes widened slightly when he saw it. Company card, I explained as he took it. I expense family dinners as team morale. Victoria stared at the card. Is that a black card? Yeah. The bank insisted once our revenue hit a certain threshold. It's mostly for travel, but the points program is good. The waiter returned with the receipt. I signed it, added a generous tip, and tucked my card away. Thank you, sweetheart, Mom said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. This was a wonderful dinner. Happy 60th, Mom. You deserve it. As we stood to leave, Victoria caught my arm. Emma, wait. I need to say something. I stopped. The others moved ahead toward the exit. I was a bitch to you, Victoria said quietly. For years. Every family dinner, every phone call, I found a way to make you feel small. I told myself it was tough love, that I was trying to motivate you, but really I was just. I don't know. Insecure, maybe. Needing to feel superior. Victoria. Let me finish, she said. You could have thrown this in my face. Tonight, when I was going on and on about my promotion, my salary, my fucking condo, you could have stopped me at any point and told everyone the truth. But you didn't. You stayed quiet until you literally had no choice. That's grace. That's class. And I've never had either of those things. You have plenty of class, I said. I really don't, she laughed. But maybe I can learn. If you'll let me. Of course, I said. Tomorrow, she said. I really do want to see your office. I want to understand what you've built. And maybe I can learn something. About business, about success, about what really matters. I'd like that, I said honestly. She pulled me into a hug. A real one, not the air kisses we usually exchanged. I'm proud of you, little sister, she whispered. I should have said that years ago. We walked out of the restaurant together. The night was cool, the city lights reflecting off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. My family stood on the sidewalk, pulling on coats and calling cars. Emma, Dad said, pulling me aside. I need to apologize. Your mother and we pushed you so hard to be practical. To be safe. We didn't see that you were already being practical in your own way, just in a way we didn't understand. You wanted what was best for me, I said. That's all any parent can do. Still, he said. We should have listened better. Trusted you more. You can start now, I said. He hugged me tight, the way he used to when I was little and scared of the dark. Mom joined us, making it a group embrace. Will you come for dinner on Sunday? She asked. Just family, nothing fancy. I want to hear everything. Every detail of the last 4 years that we missed. I'd love that, I said. My Uber arrived. I hugged everyone goodbye, even Marcus, who seemed to be seeing me with completely new eyes. As I slid into the back seat, I checked my phone. 15 messages from the team, all celebrating the Adobe win. Photos of them in the office, pizza boxes stacked high, Sarah holding up a bottle of champagne. I smiled and typed back. Proud of all of you. Enjoy the celebration. You earned it. The driver pulled away from the curb. I watched my family on the sidewalk, Victoria saying something that made Mom laugh, Dad's arm around both of them. For 4 years, I'd kept these two parts of my life separate. The daughter they thought they knew and the founder I actually was. Maybe it was time to bridge that gap. To let them see the whole picture. My phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Seriously though. Tomorrow. I want to see everything. And maybe you can tell me how you knew when it was time to take the leap. Because I think I might want to jump too. I texted back. Come by at 11. After the magazine interview. I'll give you the full tour. Can't wait, she responded. Then, after a pause. Love you, M. Love you too, I typed back. I watched the city lights blur past the window, thinking about tomorrow. The Fast Company interview, Victoria's visit, the Adobe contract officially starting. 4 years ago, I'd quit my corporate design job with $20,000 and a dream. Tonight, my family finally knew the truth. The car turned onto my street, past the coffee shops and galleries and converted warehouses. My neighborhood. My life. Mine. I thought about Victoria's question. How did I know when it was time to jump? The truth was, I didn't know. I'd been terrified. But I jumped anyway, and I built my wings on the way down. Maybe that was the only way it ever worked. The driver pulled up to my building. I thanked him, climbed out, and stood for a moment on the sidewalk, looking up at my studio window 5 floors up. Tomorrow I'd go back to my real office, my team, my company. But tonight, I'd come home to my little apartment with the good light and think about how strange life was. How the people who knew you longest sometimes knew you least. How success didn't always look the way people expected it to. My phone buzzed one more time. A message from the group chat. Boss, the team wants to know, when are we going to start calling the company what it really is? Not just Raise Creative, but Raise Empire. I laughed and typed back. Let's land a few more Fortune 500 seconds first. Then we can talk empire. But as I rode the elevator up to my floor, I thought maybe they weren't entirely wrong. Maybe what I'd built over these 4 years, quietly and carefully, really was the beginning of something bigger. Something that didn't need to announce itself with expensive clothes or fancy restaurants or condescending advice. Something that spoke for itself. I unlocked my door, dropped my keys in the bowl by the entrance, and kicked off my shoes. My laptop sat on the coffee table, waiting. I opened it and pulled up the Adobe contract Sarah had forwarded. 230 pages of legalese, deliverables, timelines, payment schedules. This was real. All of it was real. I'd spent years letting my family believe I was struggling, because it was easier than fighting their expectations. But tonight, that chapter closed. Tomorrow, a new one began. I wondered what they'd think when they saw the office. When they met Sarah and the rest of the team. When they understood that this wasn't just a lucky break or a one-time score, but something I'd built deliberately, carefully, over years of work they never saw. Maybe Victoria would find her own version of that courage. Maybe she'd take her own leap someday. Or maybe she'd stay on her corporate path and that would be fine too. Success didn't have to look the same for everyone. I closed the laptop and stood at the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, my team was celebrating. Somewhere, my family was probably still talking about the surprise of the evening. Somewhere, Adobe's marketing team was probably reviewing the contract too, planning the kickoff meeting. And here I was, in my little studio apartment, with my thrift store clothes and my beat-up Honda and my quiet life that turned out to be anything but quiet. I smiled to myself in the darkness. Tomorrow, I'd show Victoria the office. Show her the walls covered in mood boards and concepts, the conference room where we'd pitched Adobe, the kitchen where we celebrated small wins and commiserated over pitches that didn't land. Show her the reality behind the freelance thing she'd dismissed so many times. But tonight was mine. Tonight was for savoring this moment when everything changed and nothing changed at the same time. I was still me. Still Emma, who liked good light and old clothes and biking to work. Still, the daughter who disappointed her parents by not following the script. Only now they knew the rest of the story. And that, I thought as I finally headed to bed, was worth more than any title or salary or downtown condo. That was worth everything.